Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joe Bandel. Welcome to Deadly Days Tales of Dark Fantasy. I am going to continue my own book, Anarchist Knight Apprentice. We are currently on chapter 20, A Christmas Gift. Since this is fairly long, I'm going to just dive right into it. Uh, Hope you enjoy it. Chapter 20, A Christmas Gift. Tobal glanced over the fire and noticed the girls had left. He saw them by the food table and went to refill his tankard with hot grog. He wondered what he was going to tell them when he ran into them again. As the celebration wound down, his thoughts drifted to darker matters. He felt like avoiding them. Then his mind turned to the strange greeting they had given him when he had sat with them. What had been going on? What had prompted both of them to kiss him that way? He was even more interested in his own reaction to Becca when she kissed him. He knew he had done or said something wrong and didn't know what it was. He hadn't meant to hurt her. Tobal, in spite of himself, became more curious about Becca and thought about her as he sipped the hot grog. It pleased him that both Fiona and Becca had completed their own base camps and were training some newbies during the winter months. They were both obviously very talented and competent in the art of survival. Z and Kevin came up to the beer barrel where he was standing and sipping his grog. You've got to try this grog, he told them. It's Dirk's special recipe. Dirk laughed and handed them a small bowl to sample. That is pretty good, Kevin remarked. I think I will try some instead of beer. Me too, Z laughed. You guys seem like you're having a good time, Tobal grinned. How about some Yuletide carols? You know any? Kevin challenged. What about O Christmas Tree? They laughed and burst into a rousing chorus of O Christmas Tree that Dirk and Tobal joined in with. Soon the idea caught on, and later even the drums kept time to Christmas classics that dated from old eon Christianity as well as modern Yule songs. The ancient Christian tradition of Christmas was not completely forgotten, and the Lord and Lady celebrated the birth of the Christ spirit within each person's heart as well. It was a curious mixture of old and new that stirred memories of the past and brought hope for the future. Towell mingled and mixed with people he only knew by sight, introducing himself and getting to know them. Later, he accidentally intruded on an amorous couple as he was searching for a warm spot to sleep for the night and stumbled out in embarrassment. It made him wonder if he was ready for a romantic relationship with anyone. The events of the past year had been so intense he had always pushed the thought away without carefully examining it. Now, in the dead of winter, with romantic couples all around, it was rubbed in his face. He was thinking about it as he finally fell asleep. Each night was a drum circle and dancing that went well into the morning hours, and it was a luxury to sleep in and have nothing pressing to do except play games with friends. The late mornings and early afternoons were spent just doing camp chores and making everything ready for the evening's entertainment. The second day was bright and cold. This day was spent mainly in honor of the soloists that would be leaving in the morning and missing the rest of the celebration. There were talent shows with singing and juggling acts and other interesting demonstrations. These took place in one of the heated permanent log buildings. Everyone was expected to participate and share some skill or talent. Tobal enjoyed watching the talents of others, but dreaded his turn. He didn't know what he was going to do and didn't feel that he was good at anything. Luckily, those going to solo went first, and it would take a day before it got to him. Crow dazzled everyone with magic tricks and sleight of hand that had the audience laughing and left them wondering how he did it, especially his final disappearing act when he simply was not there anymore, leaving only some smoke. Tobal wondered if he had really disappeared, but then later wondered if he had really been there at all. Perhaps he had done his entire act while his physical body lay sleeping in one of the nearby teepees, doing that bilocation thing. Anne was a palm reader and kept the crowd entertained as she did private readings for anyone brave enough to hear their future. She had a corner set up with a table in the beer brewery where it was warm and quiet. There was a long line waiting to see her. He noticed Fiona, Becca, and Nikki were all waiting in line together, laughing and chatting. Seth surprised everyone by reciting long poems from memory and putting a lot of feeling into it. It seemed he had a photographic memory and could remember every word he ever read. He chose Edgar Allan Poe's classic, The Raven, and The Face on the Barroom Floor by D'Arcy. Tobal cheered and yelled with the rest of them. Seth really was good. Tobal was very impressed since he had trouble remembering anything at all. When Deirdre's turn came, Tobal felt himself wondering what she would do. He was really amazed when she was an artist and willing to make caricature drawings of anyone. He couldn't resist and waited in line with a piece of paper and pencil for her to make a quick caricature sketch of himself. He was delighted with the result and couldn't wait to show some of his friends later that evening. He never did get his own palm read. Maybe he could do that later. Misty, as High Priestess, led a very special meditation and ritual for the Yule celebration and the blessings of the Lord and Lady. Tobal was wearing his mother's jade and amber necklace and his father's dagger. He carried the hospital bracelets with him in his medicine bag that he carried around his neck, and the wand strapped to his left leg above his foot. He was wearing these things during the ritual. His eyes were closed, and he was imagining sitting on the floor of the secret cave beneath the waterfall. He was sitting in front of the central fire and had a heavy fur robe draped over his shoulders, so he was warm and comfortable even outside in the dark. He had been practicing the meditation Crow had taught him, and the impressions were becoming extremely vivid when his right arm was jostled, and he opened his eyes in annoyance and looked up. A man was sitting cross-legged, grinning at him. The man reached over and placed his hand on the dagger before Tobal could react. "Hi, son," he said. "Your mom and I have been waiting a long time to get this chance to sit and talk." "Yes, we have," a rich, melodious voice joined in from the left. "I see you have found some of our things." She leaned forward and touched the necklace, and he felt energy, like electricity, flow through it and fill him. As his father touched the dagger and his mother touched the necklace, they both seemed to take on a more solid appearance. They also seemed to have more strength and energy. They were both sitting cross-legged on the ground in front of him. His father was on his right side and his mother on his left. They were dressed in the red robes of Master. Tobal drank in the sight of them, faces he had not seen in physical reality since he was 2 years old. He wanted to burn this moment into his memory for eternity and always remember his parents as he was seeing them now. His mother wore her hair long and in braids. She had beautiful lips and gray eyes that twinkled at him. He saw the rise and fall of her breasts through an opening in her robe. He reached out to her and she held him tightly against her. His eyes burned and he blinked back tears. Are you really alive? He blinked, hardly daring to hope. He turned to his father and gripped his hand firmly. His father had long, dark, curly hair and a thick beard with strong, muscular arms and shoulders. Suddenly he was in his father's arms, being crushed in a loving bear hug. He felt his father's hands on his shoulders, gently pushing him away and back down on his cushion. His father and mother looked at each other and then back at him. There was love in their eyes and humor, too. They got up and stood in front of him. Suddenly they seemed taller and more powerful as the room radiated like the sun, and his eyes squinted against the brightness. Their robes dropped, and they stood as high priest and high priestess before him in nude splendor, holding hands like the figures in the gold medallion. "We are the Lord and Lady of the Oak," they said, and seemed to swirl and move like heat waves until they turned two-dimensional and receded back into the life-sized images painted on the cave wall above the altar. "You have our blessings always. We will talk more later." Tobal felt a snapping sound at the base of his neck, and suddenly found himself no longer in the secret cave, but in the circle at the Yule celebration ritual. Misty and the high priests were standing in front of him with their arms extended in blessing. Above the central fire he could see the smiling faces of his father and mother. He was elated and shaken by what had happened, and wanted to talk with someone about it. Crow was probably getting ready to leave. Maybe he could find Ellen and ask her. She was supposed to know about talking to the Lord and Lady. He noticed Angel taking part in the ritual as helper and wondered if she was going to be taking Misty's place soon. He found an excuse to talk with her and found out that she was training, but it would be several months until she was ready to take Misty's place. Serving on the ritual team was not a mandatory part of being a master. Only those that felt called to serve on the ritual team did so. Since the ritual positions of all 3 degrees were voluntary, there was quite a change in the number of qualified people. She had seen Ellen around, but didn't know where she was. Tobal thanked her and moved on. He suddenly remembered that Crow would be leaving soon, and he needed to give him his present. Crow was chatting with some of the others as Tobal pulled him aside and gave him his gift and wished him well on his solo. Tobal had finished his little carvings, and it was time to give them to his friends as Christmas presents. He had carefully polished them and laced them on rawhide thongs to wear around the neck like amulets. As he gave them away, he loved the looks of surprise and pleasure that lit his friends' faces as they accepted the gift. He found each of his friends and pulled them aside for a minute to quietly give them their gift. He gave Rafe the fox, Fiona got a loon, Sarah got a beaver, Ellen got an eagle, and Crow got a wolf. He had made an owl for Nick, but Nick was with Tara, and he didn't have anything for her. As everyone was showing each other their gifts, he noticed Becca sitting by herself and looking a little lost and lonely. Summoning up his courage, he went over to where she was sitting. He looked down into her troubled green eyes and felt himself being helplessly pulled into them. Tearing his gaze away, he averted his eyes and held out the owl to her. "Here," he said gruffly. Then he turned around and walked away, his face contorting with the conflicting emotions he was feeling. Mostly he felt glad and happy. It was like he had finally laid to rest a demon that had been tormenting his inner soul. He noticed Becca seemed strangely happy and had gone over to share her gift with the others and was chatting gaily. It was good to be with friends, he thought. as he made his way to the beer barrel for another tankard and some light conversation with Anne, Deirdre, and Seth before they left. This was the first time he was able to really catch up with what was going on in the lives of other clansmen, and he took advantage of it as much as he could. The first one he really had a chance to chat with was Wayne. He seemed to have gotten over his breakup with Shar and was very protective of his newbie. Tobal noticed wryly that Wayne's newbie was a cute brunette with an impish smile and a little girl look that made her appear more helpless than she really was. She had already soloed, so he knew she was able to take care of herself. He didn't understand why she chose to act like she couldn't. She was very clingy with Wayne, and it seemed she was going to wait out at least a few of the coldest months with him before trying to train on her own. Wayne seemed to be taking it all in stride and was very comfortable with the situation, but Tobal noticed that Shar kept glancing over at her and didn't seem too happy about the arrangement. He could feel the tension in the air and mentally reaffirmed something Rafe had told him about not getting into romantic relationships with newbies. It seemed like it only led to problems, and often the newbie didn't have the skills to just up and leave on their own. Rafe had always told him to get the solos out of the way first, and watching this thing between Wayne and Shar, he found that he had to agree. He spoke with some of the others he didn't know very well, and then went over to the drum circle and sat near the fire feeling the beat of the drums against his body. It was restful, and he had many things on his mind. He didn't really feel like dancing. Much later, he decided it was time for sleep and headed for bed. He cleared a spot for sleeping in one of the teepees and spread some furs on the floor. He put more wood on the fire in the center and pulled his clothes off. He was sliding in between his blankets when the door flap on the teepee opened with a gust of cold air, and in the firelight he saw Becca slip in through the door and reclose it. She turned toward him and in a husky voice asked, "Can I sleep here tonight?" Wordlessly, he sat up and took her pack, setting it down to one side. He helped her out of her furs, and she slid under the blankets with him, feeling warm and smooth against his body. Their hands stroked and explored each other gently, and then with more urgency. She moaned and gasped at his touch. His body thrilled at her touch. Soundlessly their lips merged, and later their bodies joined in an explosion of uncontrolled passion. Tobal woke up to the crackle of the flames in the fire. Becca's arms were across his chest, and she was cuddled up against him. He moved a little, and she smiled, but didn't wake up. He spent the next hour laying there, looking at her face lying next to him. He didn't want to wake her up. He just wanted to remember, forever. Morning came, and the flames died down to the point it was getting cold in the teepee when Becca finally woke up. Seeing she was awake, he took advantage and slipped out of the blankets to stir up the fire and put more wood on it. Any other sleepers had already left for breakfast, and they had the teepee to themselves. He was aware of her green eyes watching his naked body as he moved about the cold room and dived back under the blankets. She moved away from it. "You're cold," she whispered, her eyes laughing. "Then warm me up," he challenged, and she did. They missed breakfast, but hunger pangs forced them out for lunch. The third day of the Yule festival was sunny and bitter cold, but Tobal hardly noticed as he and Becca grabbed some food and headed over to watch the talent show. Fiona gave an impressive knife-throwing exhibition that drew applause from the crowd and also a growing respect as she hit several thrown targets while they were still in the air. As she left the stage, she saw them at the back of the room and moved toward them, smiling. It's about time the two of you storm clouds got together, she teased. Now maybe the rest of us can have some fun without getting rained on. Storm clouds? Tobal asked, puzzled. Don't give me any of that crap. She put her hands on her hips. I've not only had to listen to you, but I've had to listen to her. And she pointed at Becca, who was smiling. Whenever the two of you are within 6 feet of each other, there is so much static electricity in the air that it makes my hair stand up, and anyone else's that's around you. The whole camp has been making bets on when the two of you would finally get together. It wasn't that bad, was it? He whispered to Becca. She just nodded at him and kissed him. There were some tears in her eyes. He hoped they were tears of happiness. Everything is all right now, though, she brushed at her eyes. Fiona gave them both a big hug and kiss, and they watched the rest of the show together. Kevin and Z had put together a crazy puppet show, complete with a small stage. The story was about two apprentices that partnered up over the winter and fell in love. They proclaimed undying love for each other and then later wore black tunics and fought each other all the time in a bizarre twist on the journeyman degree until angels came in air sleds and carried them away. The crowd thought it was funny. Tobal wondered where they got the ideas, though, and asked them as they came off the stage. Z joked. Why, from you and Becca, of course. Good to see you finally come to your senses. Both Kevin and Z congratulated them and gave them hugs. It seemed that Z and Kevin were really happy exploring their new relationship and staying warm as possible this winter. It was Kevin that asked, So are you two going to partner up for the rest of the winter? Becca glanced first at Tobal and then at Fiona. We're both going to keep training newbies through the winter, right? She looked at Tobal expectantly and gave his arm a squeeze. That's right, he mumbled. Got to keep training newbies. We can partner up as journeymen. He knew he had given the right answer as Becca brightened and smiled widely. They turned their attention back to the stage as Sarah sang some beautiful Celtic music that she had learned from her father. Her voice and the songs were haunting and left a hush over the crowd. Tobal looked and could see tears in the eyes of some of the listeners. There was definitely love and romance in the air. Mike and Butch took the stage next and had everyone gasping and rolling on the floor at their stand-up comic routine. They were natural clowns and comedians and loved to entertain people. They concluded their act to wild applause and a break for dinner. As people broke for dinner, a line formed to congratulate Mike and Butch. It seemed they had really made a hit. Sarah came over and they all gave her a big hug and told her how beautiful her songs were. The 6 of them left to get some food and drink. Later they met with others and headed back to watch more of the talent show. The remainder of the evening was a lot of fun, even though Tobal didn't know many of the performers. It was almost as fun watching the antics of the audience and chatting with friends. Mike and Butch showed up after dinner in high spirits and were looking to have some fun with the girls. Their comedy routine had made them very popular, and like celebrities, they were surrounded with groupies. They were party animals and liked to play with the girls at Circle, where it was fun and light. There were lots of girls that liked fun too, and Tobal guessed neither Mike nor Butch would be sleeping alone tonight. Becca noticed his jet and amber necklace and asked about it. He suggested they go back to the teepee where they could talk. They helped each other undress and slid into the blankets to keep warm. It was about an hour later when Becca reminded him about the necklace. Slowly, he told her the story from the beginning and showed her the necklace, the hospital bands, the ceremonial dagger and the wand. She was quiet and didn't say very much after that. They made love once more and fell asleep. In the morning, they both agreed the sweat hut sounded like a good idea. They laughed as they sat in the steam and told stories as the sweat ran off them. They dared each other to run outside and roll in the snow and run back in. To the amazement of several onlookers, they were both crazy enough to do it, although their hair was frozen almost immediately once they made it outside. Once was enough, and the next trip was to get their clothes. It was refreshing and put them in a good mood. Becca made up her mind to take the stage at the talent show. She was a surprising gymnast and did some cartwheels, headstands, and handsprings that showed just how good a shape she was really in. She topped it off with a backflip that brought cheers. Then it was Tobal's turn. In desperation, Tobal painted his face and did a pantomime routine about claiming sanctuary, how bad the food and water were, how it took his things, and did the med exam. He pantomimed all of it, down to taking a shower without clothing, much to the hoots and laughter of the crowd after they finally realized what he was doing. The newbies especially thought it was funny, and everybody had a good laugh out of it. Later, people came up and said how they had enjoyed it. Next on the stage were Nick and Tara. Tara had gotten Nick as drummer and did a strip dance for the entire group to enthusiastic applause. Tobal and Becca talked with them after the show. Nick and Tara looked happy together. They had settled for the winter at her base camp, and Nick had done lots of heavy work getting things ready for the winter. Tara boasted they even had enough firewood already cut to last through the winter. Nick had made stone axes for both of them, and they had worked at it till it was done. Nick flushed at the praise, but there was a quiet glow of acceptance in knowing he had earned it. Tobal realized Nick had matured a lot in just a few months since he had worked with him and known him. Sometimes relationships did that to a person. Nick had shown his stone axes at the talent show earlier. The celebration was not all fun and games, though. Ox showed up for the Yule party. He had 2 chevrons and was boasting about beating Rafe, which almost got him into a fight there. Rafe was well liked, and no one likes a bully, especially one that rubs things in. After a bit, he stuck with some of the rowdier journeymen and concentrated on getting drunk. Drunken journeymen brought their own share of problems into the camp. That week, the entire camp went through the emergency beer supply and ran out. Tobal thought that might be one of the reasons people started the cold journeys back to their own base camps by the end of the 4th day. Nikki was planning to try for another newbie. She was determined to at least try training in the wintertime and see if it suited her or not. She really didn't look forward to spending the entire winter partnering with anyone and was trying to avoid it if she could. She liked both training and the solitude of being alone at times. She already had 2 chevrons and was tied with Becca and Fiona. Having a little fun at the parties once a month was just fine for her. She wanted to be a citizen and didn't want to waste precious months and years camping out in the woods like Wayne and Shar. Tobal had noticed Nikki really seemed to not like Wayne and Shar for some reason and couldn't figure out why. Fiona and Becca were competitive enough that they hated the thought of Nikki advancing ahead of them, and someone needed to train this month's newbies. All 3 girls tried talking him into going to sanctuary with them, but he really felt like he needed a break. There had been too much happening, and he needed some time to sort things out, especially about Becca and himself. Late January was bitter with sub-zero temperatures. There were several cases of frostbite that needed tending at the gathering spot, and the medics made a point to question everyone if they needed to be treated. Frostbite, if not treated, could lead to infection and the loss of a limb. Sarah proclaimed her newbie Ben as ready to solo. There were 2 others willing to solo, and the elders grudgingly gave their approval after issuing strict warnings about the dangers of these extreme temperatures. Each soloist had 2 weeks' supply of food they had prepared ahead of time and warm clothing. They felt they were ready. 4 more people had gone. They just packed up and headed west toward the coast. The medics kept track of them until they were out of range. The winter months were the ones when they lost the most people, even though it was the most dangerous time of year for travel. That month, not many showed up at Circle. Z and Kevin continued staying together and didn't show up at Circle. Neither did Wayne or his soloed student. Tobal suspected they were waiting out the winter together. Shar and her partner didn't come either, and it was probably because of the bitter cold this time of year. Tara and Nick were not there either. Those were just clansmen Tobal had hoped to see, but didn't. Mike and Butch showed up in high spirits and looking to have some fun with the girls like last month. They were hoping for a little casual sex with no strings attached. Just something to release the tension of cabin fever that started to grow this time of year. Last month's week-long celebration had given the 2 eternal optimists much encouragement, and they hoped to push their luck again. The trouble was, no matter how much they tried, none of the girls seemed interested. Crow was back and talking with the others when Tobal got there. They all looked as he came over. Becca slipped into his arms and gave him a passionate kiss. His grip tightened on the tankard, his voice low with shock as she whispered in his ear. "Everyone knows," she whispered in his ear. "Knows what?" he said with a grin, teasing one of her stray hairs back in place. "About the rogues, your parents, Crow's parents, Sarah's parents, the massacre and the possible attack on the village." "What?" His smile vanished. "I told Melanie and Nikki," she confessed, "on the way to Sanctuary last month. It seemed important. They're both very concerned. But Crow has been telling everyone else since he came in this morning. He's getting a group together to go to the village to ensure its protection." Crow's voice steadied as he outlined the plan. He looked at Tobal. "Grandfather says it's good if I bring as many others as I can. He says it will help ensure the safety of the village. He says you can come if you want." "You have been in contact with your grandfather about this?" Crow nodded. "We're only planning on staying there for a month and then coming back. The main point is to show that there is goodwill between the village and us, and that we are in contact with each other when we need to be. Grandfather thinks the city needs to know this. We will all be leaving in the morning." They'd packed overnight, urgency driving them. Tobal couldn't think of anything useful to say. "Can you talk to Ellen before you go?" "Sure," Crow replied. "Things will be fine." Well, guys, that's the end of that chapter. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next week. Thank you.